a double dose of it. You know what I mean? So I have the deer netting all around the garden, and then I've got the drywall on the bottom to keep the bunnies out. And that has done it for a year.
Yeah.
Kept everybody out.
Well, you haven't had determined raccoons or ringtails or possums.
All right.
Your fruit's not as good as mine, I guess.
All right.
Bring some in for them to try.
The one disease that can be real problematic in tomatoes is something called early blight. And that's this yellowing that starts at the base and tends to move up the plant. Three things that we have found that really do seem to help with controlling it. One is, if it's a problem, when you first plant your plants, put just a handful of whole ground cornmeal on the ground underneath the plants. That grows a beneficial fungus called trichoderma that will get rid of many damaging fungi. There is a new product on the market that a handful of people used last year and reported very good results. This is something called plant wash, and it's like a long chain soap material. And people that tried this told me that they had no problems with early blight. I've just got one or two plants that I always seem to get early blight on my yellow pears. Doesn't bother much of anything else. But I'll be trying this year on some of the different ones. But if you're just putting out not too many tomatoes where you can spray it, one or two applications of this probably will work very well against early blight.
Spray the plant?
Spray the plant.
How often?
I do it and do it again in about 2 weeks. Now, there's another new product out there that I want to tell you about that is real interesting, both in theory, and again, we had this for the first time last year, and some people tried it and told us they got really, really good results. I did not try it last year, a pretty good garden without it, but I think it's certainly worth trying. And this is something that is called Messenger, is the name they sell it under. And what it is something called harpin, H-A-R-P-I-N, harpin protein. John Dromgoole up in Austin is one that told me about this. And harpin protein is made from insects and diseases that attack plants, principally vegetable plants. And while scientists for a long time have said plants do not have an immune system, period. Plants do not have an immune system in the sense that animals have an immune system. I mean, it's a whole different process. But there's no question now, after some more research, that plants can create an immune response which helps to protect them against insect attack and disease attack. And spraying with this stuff really seems to activate what in plants passes for an immune system. And I've had extremely good reports from people using this stuff saying that it not only has really helped with early blight and with a number of different insect problems, but has also worked to increase fruit production. I'm not going to tell you until I try it in my garden, which I will do this year. But for $3.50, if you've had problems with early blight and some other things, I think it might very well be worth a try.
Does that apply to a hose-in sprayer?
Hose-in sprayer, pump-up sprayer, anything you want to use.
Is that just for a gallon of water? Is that all that?
I think this makes 3 gallons. Might even make more than that. I'll have to read on it and see. But when you're just coating the foliage, a little bit goes a long way.
Will it get rid of those black and yellow beetles?
I don't know.
Okay.
We'll try it and see.
Right.
That's the best thing for those guys. But
what is the best thing for those guys?
That.
There's a lot of them. When I quit diatomaceous earth,
The old Chinese proverb, the best insecticide is the footprint of the gardener. Snails and slugs. Had a girl work for me up in Bernie that used to go around and she'd go, "You won't have the guts to do that again." Anyway, those seem to be a problem. One last thing I want to tell you about tomato plants, or two related things. There are people, mainly Yankees. You notice I didn't use the descriptive adjective in front of that because my grandfather was from Connecticut, so we can't be too hard on him. But a lot of people in the northern part of the country always talk about suckering your tomatoes, because, you know, they're taking off those little shoots that are coming out. I say only suckers sucker their tomatoes because I've never found it necessary, and I think you get more production if you leave the suckers on there. However, if you want to start some new tomato plants, say you love Donna tomatoes and you can't find any of them, well, you found 1 6-pack, you can actually take cuttings from tomatoes. Cuttings root very easily, and you can start more plants from cuttings. And you can start new plants from the suckers. But now remember, we talked about 3 sizes of tomatoes: determinate, semi-determinate, and indeterminate. If you're going to take cuttings, don't wait till your determinant reaches full size, because there's a physiological change that takes place, and the cuttings on those will, they may root, but they will not grow. If you're going to take cuttings from indeterminate tomatoes, you can do that at any time. But determinants and semi-determinants, the cuttings have to come from the very low base part of the plant that hasn't gone through that maturing process yet. Okay, from tomatoes, just couple of quick words about tomatoes and peppers and eggplants. The technique is exactly the same. I grow my eggplant and my peppers when I can in a little short cage. You know, I told you about the top pieces you can put on these. I usually use a little short cage that I put around them, or else I use my old pieces of wire. Why? Because my eggplant, I may have 15 pounds of eggplants on the plant at one time. In a big wind, I've had them just fall over. So, I'll do the same thing. I've picked, half a bushel of jalapenos off of one little 2-plant pack. So, the thing about eggplants and peppers is that they are much hotter weather plants. So I would not normally plant these until at least 2 or 3 weeks after I plant my tomatoes. Don't jump the gun on them, or they'll just sit there and the bugs will eat them up before they have a chance to really start growing. And now one other problem you may have in the garden sometimes are snails and slugs. Do not use bug bait. It's very poisonous, and I never use anything poisonous in the garden, and it's very poisonous to animals. A teaspoon of bug bait is enough to kill a small dog, and it has an attractant in it. And Dan Kirby, my vet friend, was telling me about one time watching somebody walking around putting out bug bait and watching their dog walk behind eating it as they put it out. New product that very effectively kills snails and slugs is called Sluggo. Iron phosphate. It's totally safe against. It's totally effective against snails and slugs, and totally safe for kids and pets. They have recently improved it. They made it something called Sluggo Plus. Whatever they put in it, which was spinosad, must have been expensive because they raised the price substantially. But Sluggo Plus will take care of snails, slugs, and pill bugs. If you're just fighting snails and slugs, don't spend the extra money. Just go with plain old ordinary Sluggo, and that will take care of it. Okay, moving along to a couple of other things. Beans. Anybody grow green beans, beans and peas, things like that? Let's talk about them for just a minute. Beans and peas, whether you're dealing with cool weather things like sugar snap peas, or warm weather things like black eyes, which are really beans and not peas, or green beans, or lima beans, or soybeans, or things like that. These things are legumes. And legumes are interesting plants in that they are one group of plants that have the ability to form a little nodule on the root of the plant that fills with bacteria. And these are very, very special, I think of them as just almost magical bacteria, because they are able to take nitrogen out of the air. You know, every breath of air you're taking, you're breathing in a whole lot more nitrogen than you are oxygen. But these bacteria have the ability to take nitrogen from the air and convert it into fertilizer that the plants use. In old days, you know, people rotated their crops, and they'd plant corn, and then they'd plant beans, and they'd plant corn, and then they'd plant beans, because they knew for whatever reason that beans rebuilt the soil while corn stole the nutrients from it. Well, the problem is that a lot of our soils do not initially have enough of this bacteria to really help the plants out, to really help them form these little nodules on the roots. And if you are going to plant beans and peas, I highly recommend that you get this stuff that is, they just call it inoculant. And what this is, it's about as fine as dust. This is probably enough to treat about 100,000 seed or something like that. But the first time you plant beans and peas in an area, if you want the absolute best production, inoculate your seed with this stuff, and you will get much, much better results. So we'll talk a little bit about different kinds of beans in just a second. The way that I do this,